Hi, my name is Mark David Gerson, and I'm here today to share with you an excerpt from my memoir, Acts of Surrender, a Writer's Memoir. To learn more about Acts of Surrender or me or my other books, please visit my website at www.markdavidgerson.com. You can also visit actsofsurrender.com for more information about the memoir. I'm going to share with you one of the opening chapters from Acts of Surrender, at least a piece of it, and it's called An Inconvenient Truth. There are three stories of how I came to be. The conventional one, the one close family and friends were told, and the truth, a truth that remained hidden for decades, like many others in the house of secrets in which I grew up. A few months after my mother died, I went to visit her oldest friend, Sophie Katz. I arrived at Sophie's suburban Toronto home, armed with a tape recorder and questions, determined to learn more about a woman who had rarely spoken about herself or her past. Animated even though she was reclining on her sofa, Sophie recounted story after story about their growing up years in Montreal. My favorite because it revealed a side of my mother that I had never witnessed, how the two of them in their teens, strolling down Boulevard Saint-Laurent, then Jewish Montreal's Main Street. This would have been in the mid-30s, at the height of the Depression. As Sophie described it, a vagrant sitting on the curb grabbed my mother's ankle. She shook it free and they continued on. After half a block, my mother stopped, spun around, and marched back. Glaring at the vagrant, she kicked him. She kicked him hard, and then returned to Sophie. Strong-willed, an odd blend of fear and fearlessness. That was Edith Plotnick Gerson Ravinsky. Edith was the English version of her Yiddish name, Esther. Although I never knew her as Esther, it's as Esther that I'd like to imagine her, the biblical queen who risked everything to follow a higher imperative. Like her namesake, this Esther took risks, but she mitigated hers by never speaking of them. This Esther only looked forward, either because the present was too painful, or the past could harm her if disclosed. This Esther, according to Sophie, was so determined to have a second natural child that she would bypass my father, whose diabetes had likely rendered him impotent. When I asked another close friend of my mother's whether she could verify Sophie's story, she shared the version she and a handful of others had been told at the time: artificial insemination, donor unknown, a rare but viable practice in 1954. Viable? Yes, but according to Sophie, not true. In the middle of our interview, she stopped and sat halfway up. "Do you want to know everything?" she asked forebodingly. "Of course, why wouldn't I?" "Sidney was not your father." I stared back dumbstruck. Not for the first time in my life, and certainly not for the last, I realized that I was not who I thought I was. For more about Acts of Surrender, please visit my website at markdavidgerson.com. You'll also find information there about my other books. You can also visit actsofsurrender.com, and I hope you enjoy the book.